Good afternoon and welcome to the December Committee of the Whole Board meeting. We'll get started today at 4:34, and I'll turn it over to the clerk for roll call.
Member Banks.
Here.
Chair Derek Eater.
Present.
Member Loeffler Kemp is tardy. Member Lofald.
Here.
I am Member Mixel. I'm here. Member Sadowski.
Here.
Member Williams. Superintendent Megas.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Present.
Deputy Clerk Zunich.
Present.
Executive Assistant Brown is excused. Secretary Paquette. Roll call is complete.
Thank you, and before we get started today, and I turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds, there's a couple board members that will be leaving a little bit earlier today as we have some kid events that we have to attend to, so just want to make everybody aware of that, and I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Thank you, and good evening, board and guests. Welcome. So we'll jump right on into it. So one of the things that we've been working on for the committee whole, as always, we're always thinking about process improvements. So as a process improvement for the committee of whole, we are adding what's known as the TLE Board Summary Report as a standing monthly agenda topic. The TLE Board Summary Report is designed for program leaders and department leaders to provide concise, high-level overviews of their program status, activities, or future planning. So it's just a really great way to just keep the board informed about many things. However, many times department leaders and program leaders, there just isn't enough time to give a full presentation because there's so many things that are exciting that's happening in the district. And there's just not enough time at the board meetings to do that. So in lieu of a presentation, the board summary report will provide, again, the board with a status update. The individual who provides that program summary will be present at the meeting. The expectation is, and the goal is, the board would have seen the summary reports, have read them, generated questions, and I would simply, as part of the standing agenda item, I would just say, as one of the board summary reports up is the First Street build out progress. And I'll simply say, are there any questions? Board members will have a chance to ask questions. If it's a question that I can answer, I would simply answer. If it's something more specific that the board a board member might want to ask related to a certain summary report, I would then call up the program leader or department leader to the chair, and they can ask questions. So again, this is just an opportunity to increase the number of opportunities for individuals to get in front of the board without a full presentation. They're meant to be really concise, and the Q&A is also meant to be, potentially, hopefully, pretty concise in terms of just seeking clarity on something that a program leader or department leader is working on. So the first one, do I want to move straight into?
And I was just going to encourage the board, as we go through this process, I encourage you to talk about if it fits your needs, if there's a way that you'd like to see improvement, and then just think about it, and then please share that feedback with Anthony and myself, because we want to make sure that we're serving the needs of this committee and this board to make sure they're getting all the information in the ways that they want. Is that fair, Anthony?
That's fair.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So just a follow-up question on most of these. Did you call it TILE? T-I-L-L-E? No, TLE.
TLE.
TLE,
Yeah.
see?
Teacher learning activity,
Okay, yep,
yes.
I got it now. Sounded like Tilly to me, so I thought that was a new thing. So would it be reports, like for instance, the DNT, the First Street build-out, that will not come every month? It's not going to be a progress update every month? Or do you anticipate that one might be?
No, it's not it would not be a progress update
Okay.
every month. It would vary. It just depends on if a program leader shares with me throughout the month that they have something they want to bring, and it's not something that we want to say is a agenda item for a full presentation. For example, Keyzone, as you are aware, Keyzone is something that we provide our families as a service in our schools. They want to come and share information with the board as a program status update. In lieu of a full presentation, I've offered them an opportunity to provide a summary report. They'll give us a quick summary report, give you information that you can read in terms of, where they're located, the number of students and so forth. I still will invite them if they, to be here in case you may have a question or are wondering, but, again, they would not provide a full presentation. So no, it's not. The item would be standing, the board summary report would be a standing agenda item with topics to be determined.
So my follow-up question would be, tonight especially, is I thought we would be getting a presentation, because that's been kind of our standard role here, is that, so I did not realize that we're not going to necessarily call up our facilities or our ICS leadership. We can if we have questions. But my questions often come after they've shared some of theirs. But there's enough for me here. But I'm just saying to my fellow school board members, I was coming feeling like I was going to hear the presentation first. And so just knowing going forward now that, and what will we call these on our, so on the agenda, can we list them out a little bit more?
Yes, they
Yeah.
will be titled board summary reports. If you see,
Yeah, like it is right now, okay. But now we have a definition for that. Okay, enough, okay.
and again, this is something that's new we're trying to introduce, again, as a process improvement. That's why we actually had several that we were going to bring, but because of these questions, we said, you know what, let's start off with one to make sure there was an opportunity for the board to become familiar with what they are and to ask those really good questions so that you can know what to anticipate or what are the expectations moving forward. So really good questions. Superintendent Magus?
Actually, Member Mike Sill was first.
Just to further the conversation about this new process, you had somewhat alluded to it. How many summary reports do you expect to happen at every committee of the whole meeting? Just so we can be, just so everyone understands what the new process will look like and the expectations.
Great question, and it depends, but I guess that's through our conversation, we can decide, well, we know we have a summary report, and it depends how robust the Q&A is, will help us determine, like, you know what, we probably should only have 2 summary reports at the most, or 3. It just depends how deep the board gets with regards to questions. So right now, it could be from 1 until 3 or 4. But we're testing it out and seeing if how long the conversations will go.
Good, thank you so much.
And then for the public, these board reports will be up on Board Book. So that same like every other presentation, the community will have access to this through Board Book.
Yes,
Yeah.
as normal. That's correct. Superintendent Magus?
Sure, and I think the process improvement concept behind this is also quite often, we have a lot of conversation at the board table and in other settings, we should have a presentation, or we should have an update on this at the committee of the whole. And then also we've had conversation about maybe keeping the meetings to a reasonable amount and not having, 7 really robust presentations in the same evening. And so really thinking about how do we distill some of them down into these board summary reports, that can be delivered more concisely and be used as just sort of a check-in on certain things. That was really the thinking behind it. And, if the board sees these and decides, no, actually, we like presentations and we want to have more presentations, or if we decide that, reading these reports is not, or, doing these reports ahead of time is not what the board wants, then we can deviate. But I guess an analogy I would use is thinking about like the nutritional services report that we get in the HR business meeting. I know that's a standing one we get every month. But if you think about some of those reports that we see as a report, and we don't necessarily go into it as a presentation, but it's meant as an update for that committee. This, even though it's a committee of the whole, it's still a committee. And so thinking about it that way is the way that the way that we're thinking about it. But if it doesn't meet the needs of the board, we can do something different.
Thank you. Member Sadowski?
More of a comment. I'm just looking forward to seeing how this goes over the next few months, and looking forward to kind of getting board feedback over the next few months as well. I know we've had a lot of conversations. Superintendent Magus, you kind of touched on it, but we've had a lot of conversations, and about our committee of the whole and, who do we want to hear from everybody. It's our chance to hear from all of our different amazing programs in the district, what's going on. But we don't have time to touch base with everybody throughout the year. So I hope that this might be a good chance to get more information, like you said, at that high level. So just curious to see how it goes.
Thank you. So let's go into our very first one as our first opportunity. So the very first one, as you see it here, it's A under the Teacher Learning Equity Board Summary Reports. It's the First Street build-out progress. So you have received some information related to the report. The report was generated, as you can see on here, by Brian Brown. He has guests with him. They have provided some information related to the build-out. So are there any questions regarding the First Street build-out progress report? Member Lowfoot.
So my first question would be just, I'd love the opportunity to have site visits, and I know that we scheduled a few and one got canceled due to snow. How many of us have visited the site within the time that the construction and all the walls? We've all visited it a number of times before, during the process, but now so how many have had that opportunity? Okay. I know not many of us, because it's been just a little bit over a month where we've had a little bit more, and I know that Member Zadowski has just requested a reschedule for the snow day, and so that's a good thing. So again, just really looking forward to more opportunities as we progress for opportunities to visit. And I know that stalls some things out, but as we progress, especially when we get more of those walls up and things going on, that we can really see the space and what it will serve for. My second question is, are we at a point at all with our architect firm, which I believe is the Miller architect, with renderings of what it looks like just in those beautiful 3D pictures that you give us that has classroom walls and furniture and all of that? And if that could be forthcoming in the next few weeks, that would be another way for the board to get an idea of all of the space, and that will help.
Thank you. And I'll ask about the 3D, because you used a word that in my mind says 3D. We have provided, I have provided the board via email
with the
most recent
Right.
Yep, layout.
layout.
Yep.
But you're saying 3D.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
Chris and Brian, you want to come on up to the table?
And as they come up, I would just like, are we on track for the whole building? I thought we were doing like the second floor so we could get our ALC, AEO, and our adult basic ed in there, and then the first floor was going to continue to work, or is the whole thing going to be ready except for our basement in the fall of '26?
Great questions.
The whole building will be completely ready by August 1st, or before August 1st. They're planning the completion date on July 15th. That'll be for the entire building.
Okay. I have other questions, but I'll let other board members kind of go, but I know that I was expecting a presentation, so I'm just trying to look at my notes again.
No problem. 3D renderings, not renderings, but 3D. Did you answer that question?
No.
Sure. It's an option to do so. It wasn't in the contract initially to do renderings of
okay,
the
okay.
spaces. If it's of interest, we can look into it.
Thank you. Member Banks?
Oh, thank you very much. I have two questions. One's internal and external. So the internal, this is 72,000 square feet. And according to the documentation, 51,000 square feet are accounted for, and that remaining 21,000 that's left in the basement. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know there has been questions about fairness and equitability with regard to space. And so I initially had the question as it related to current locations in use downtown and this upcoming location. Can you talk a little bit about that as it relates to allocation of square footage for different programs that are coming to that building? And then my external question is related to outside lighting and safety protocols related to the building and the area that, where it's situated. Can you just talk more about what that's going to look like outside from a safety standpoint, just so we make sure our students and folks visiting are coming to the building safely and leaving safely, et cetera? If you have anything to share with that.
We are adding quite a bit of exterior lighting and several cameras on the outside. So every part of our building will be able to be monitored. Also, once you get in the building, we have security points that only there's certain staff can get into these areas. Students aren't allowed into them. Again, we have cameras throughout the whole building. So you really can't go anywhere in the building without having some eyes on you. We've been working with, I know that Nathan from ALC had requested, and we're going over that with the IT, because we want to make sure that we're not overkill on the cameras, that we're getting the same vision, just different angles. So IT is going over, reviewing that. I expect that they'll have something for us within the next couple weeks, but, yeah, all of our doors, matter of fact, we met today with Premier Security and making sure that we have the infrastructure there, that if we need to add any more secure doors or add more cameras, that is there for them. It's not going to be a big deal for us to change that. But it's going to be a very secured building. Everybody is going to have their own areas, and each department is going to be basically self-efficient if they want to be, that they have their own restrooms in their areas, they have their own classrooms, they have teacher spaces, they have calming rooms, they have everything that they normally would have at their other buildings.
So can you talk a little bit about the square footage?
Okay, the square footage, we have nothing planned for the square footage in the basement. I know there's going to be a couple areas that are going to be pretty much wide open. We just looked at funding for the programs that we needed at this time, and that's what we based our budget on. And when we first started this, way back when, we sent out questionnaires to every department and asked them, what is important to you, what that you have to have? There was certain things like, well, we need to be on the bus line, we need to have our own secured areas, we need to have a lockdown system for such and such. We need to have gathering spaces for students. We need to have this, we need to be able to serve this many students in each department. And so we took all that information and we met several times with the departments, with Anthony, the senior leaders, and came up with a plan. And that is the plan that Chris and Miller has developed. And before we started working on it, we brought it to the school board, and you all had a chance to take a good, long look at it, and you approved that this is what the plan was. Now, we are making a few changes here and there for some small department changes. They want a wall taken out, they want a door added here. So we still are doing that, but the product that we showed you when we started this is the product that we're going to deliver to you. It's going to be delivered to the ISD 709 school board and the citizens of the Duluth School District. And it's be clearly up to you guys. If you want to change that programming or change what's in what, that's up to you. We're just delivering what we promised, and that's what we will. And it'll be by the 1st of August. Will be our building down there.
I'm not sure who was next, but Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Thank you. Sorry, I was running late from work there. I had a couple similar questions that Member Banks had, but also I just want to say, Brian, have appreciated the tours. I think I've gone on 3 of them since we've started this project at least, and look forward to the one that you were trying to coordinate this fall, so with us. So.
And I know it's really hard for all you guys to try and get your schedules, but if you just shoot me a time and a day, I'll make it work. I can take one of you, 2 of you, however many. It is changing very fast down there. All the floors have pretty much been leveled off now. There is a lot of classroom walls going up on the second floor, offices. It's going fast, and soon we'll be starting down on the first floor also. The basement's completely tore up. I'm sure you remember going through the storage areas, but that's all cut up because we put all new water and sewer lines in, the infrastructure that we needed to do for that. We have our new water line in from the city, so we're just, once we get the plumbing in the building, we can hook up to that, and so it's moving right on schedule.
Great. And so one of my questions had to do with the square footage again, and just to clarify a little bit more, and I know some of us posed that question after we got the summary report, but how much square footage for ALC and AEO do they currently have, and how much in this new space? And the same with adult basic ed. I don't think people ask that question, but I'm curious because I know how little space you have right now as well. So could you just,
Sure.
what they currently have?
Right now, we lease almost 1,400 square foot down at the Tech Village. Almost 2,000 of that is unusable because it's hallways, it's entryways.
You said 1,400?
14,000, I'm sorry, 14,000. 2,000 is, like I said, unusable. Their usable space down there is 12,137 square foot, I believe. The engineered space that we've designed for them is going to be 12,700 and some odd square feet. But that has been designed for what their program's needs were, for their offices, their classrooms. Currently, their desk space being very comfortable and very spacey. Well, now we can add more desks in there like we have at high schools and stuff if need be. But right now, currently, they can serve 180 students every hour of the day. That's how many desks we have for the classrooms. And that doesn't include the gathering spaces. That's just the classrooms.
Do you have, can you pull that number also for the adult basic or adult education? And if you can't, that's okay. I know I'm putting you on the spot on that one.
I don't know what the top of the number is for the adult ed. I'd have to look it up.
You can get it to us. I know many of us posed the question on the first space, but I was thinking about the second space as well after reading over things a little bit more. And then the last thing is I went back to my notes over this past year of how many times we've had presentations either in our HR committee or at our regular meeting, and I counted at least 6 times, I think, that we've had presentations on this. So I really, really appreciate getting those regular updates, and even though some of us don't sit on the HR committee, we listen to the meetings and read the materials as well. And so kind of back to the front of this meeting where we talked about thinking we were going to have a presentation, I just reflected on how many times we have had information presented to us just in this past year. So that's been really important for me as a board member to get those regular updates, and appreciate what's been done, appreciate what will be done in the next few months as well with updates.
And like I said, at any time, if you want to go down and take a look, because it's changing every day, they're starting to do the basement infill for the concrete so they can put the infill floors for second floor in. And so it's changing every day down there. It's just really moving forward quickly.
Member Banks?
Sure. I have one last question on this related to parking. Is there going to be a relationship with Maurice's or the city of Duluth related to parking for folks, or are you going to just utilize off-street parking, et cetera?
We have not discussed with the city, I take that back. We have discussed a little bit with the city with Maurice's parking. The city kind of runs that parking garage. And they just tell me there's ample spots there for us, that I'm sure that we'll get some kind of a deal. Thanks to our superintendent, he was able to talk the city out of charging us for the drop-off areas for right now, the contractors area, and that's a big help. So the city is very willing to work with us on these different spots. There are other lots down there that are optional for renting, but clearly there's plenty of spots. We do have 28 spots of our own downstairs under the garage, and there's 18 spots off of First Street. And so we will utilize them, use them, but will that be enough for all the staff and students? No, we're going to have to do something like the Tech Village is doing now, where we have to pay for parking.
Member Meixel?
That was just. I had a follow-up question on the spaces we already have, but I think you were answering it, so I'm going to shut my mic off.
Thank you for the summary report. I know it was mentioned in possibly a superintendent's report in the past, but how often are you now meeting with stakeholders and the different departments as building goes on to update them?
We've been meeting, we just started meeting with them, I should say. We met with them, was it last week, on the carpet and wall colors? And we have hardware. They email me, can we eliminate this cabinetry or move this or whatever? So I'm always open to emails, and I'm on the phone with Chris constantly, and we're making changes, minor changes, nothing huge. But yeah, anytime they want to email me. And again, the main layout is the main layout. To redesign the whole thing, that ship has sailed a long time ago, so.
And I'll add some additional information. Last year, I want to say in the spring, maybe, it occurred where we started having virtual bi-weekly check-in meetings set up every Friday at 10 o'clock, not every Friday of the bi-weekly meeting at 10 o'clock. We have a standing meeting for First Street build-out programming leaders. Now, because of, like everything else, because of time and summer and when school is not in session, the meeting wouldn't happen, but we still have it in our calendars right now to have ongoing dialogue with program leaders. And just like Brian shared, most recently, I have it, the note here, we met most recently on November the 14th. So November 14th, we discussed the build out to look at, all the program leaders were in the room, met with Chris, Brian, and others. We just talked about the build out and the renderings that you all received. So the design and layout that you all received, we discussed those. And leaders had opportunities to share a little information. Some of them also provided information related to they wanted a cabinet moved or they wanted a door added and so forth. So they had an opportunity on the 14th to have more dialogue in person around that. And then we met last week on November 19th as a follow-up to that to start talking about carpet selection. So then we met with each program leader, had their own opportunity to meet with myself, Brian, Chris, to just talk about carpets and flooring, and leaders had an opportunity to have some input on what carpet they would like in their section or the color of that carpet. They heard information related to paint and their ability to select paint and maybe the accent wall or walls within those rooms. So they have those opportunities, and that just happened last week. So we have, we're striving to have really opportunities for great input and discussions with our program leaders.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that we can send you a message anytime and get a personal tour. Are program leaders also able to possibly not like at the drop of a hat, but on a scheduled or routine basis, be able to see inside and what's happening, or how's that working out?
I leave that decision to the senior leaders. If they want me to take a department down there, I'm most happy to do it. I can't have a whole department go at one time. I can have maybe a few people. But this is a construction zone, and everybody has to be wearing hard hats and vests and closed-toe shoes, and we can't have a million people walking around down there. But like I said, it's up to the senior leaders to make that decision.
And what we've communicated to our program leaders is if they want to have a tour, that they are to schedule it with Brian. So we've extended the opportunities, but as long as they arrange it with Brian based off availability, and just like Brian said, to make sure that everyone is safe and that there are not pop-up visits to the site.
Thank you.
Your mic was on, Superintendent Mackes?
You answered the question.
Chair Derek Eater?
I know we talked about this probably last year, but can you remind me about what the food prep is? So what food access will look like for kids there? I don't think there's not a kitchen or anything. I don't remember, Brian, could you? And then I
No,
have one more question.
We'll have the food prepared at another building, and it'll be just like the ALC now, and I think there might be one other school that we deliver the food to. They will come in from the parking garage into our building, into the elevator, down to the basement. That area is being all refinished down there to meet health code, so we can have food down there. There'll be serving carts down there. There'll be coolers down there. So each individual program, they'll order their food. It'll be delivered to one central location down there. Then as they want to serve their lunches, they can come down that, get their serving cart, get their cooling cart, take it to their area, and then have lunch in their department. And then when they're done, they can just bring all the dishes, everything back down there, and then our crew will pick it back up and for the next day.
For clarification, students will have warm food, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's known, it's not cold food.
Which is different than what they have access to now, right? They don't have warm food now. Oh, we did fix that, okay, all right.
There was a point that
There was,
they did not,
okay, I
but
can't,
they-
okay.
they did
And
not.
then, in the budget that we have for this building, I'm assuming furnishing and all those other things have been included in the budget?
Correct.
Okay, so furnishings, and then what about hiring of additional staff? Is that something we're gonna have to budget for next year in terms of custodial staff, nutrition staff? Like, what is the staffing? We already know that we have all these programs in there, but is there gonna be additional staffing that we're gonna have to take into consideration?
We'll probably be needing a couple custodians. The building will not require an engineer because it's on city steam. So there's really no reason to have a licensed engineer down there because there's nothing to check. It's all a sealed system. We have not talked about staffing at this point. My instructions were to get the building up and running and, I'm sure by this summer, we'll be looking at those things. Yeah.
I think that would be something that we should probably have an idea about as a board is, what is that staffing gonna look like? I'm sure it's not gonna be huge, but
I think I'd like us to take a little time, take a look at that, thinking about the front reception desks and things like that. I know we talked about people maybe having cross-purpose, but I know that sometimes there is always a little more need with an extra building than there is if there isn't a separate building and some of the contracted services and things like that we might have to consider too. But we can, with just a little bit of time, we can reflect on that. I also want to say, what I was going to say earlier, I know there were a couple comments about the board thinking that this might be a presentation. If in the near future, if the board wanted another presentation on this, we'd be glad to bring it forward as a presentation or maybe a couple months from now after we're a little further down the road too, whatever's desired by the board.
And then quickly, last question for me is, you talked about the IT, the security, the cameras and everything. Are we going to have security there?
Yes, the plan is to have,
Okay.
continue with Permar
Oh,
as
got it, okay.
our provider. Now, the answer is yes, and the plan is Permar, but we have to obviously contract.
Yeah,
with them.
contract, okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Member Lofold?
So I know we've had this conversation before too, and I know that the numbers are probably not easy to gain because there's a lot of programs in the building, both first floor and second floor, that have, moving parts. They leave for part of the day or they're stationed there and then they're out in buildings. I get that. But I really would love at some point from someone an approximate number of what are we really looking at, the number of people in this building on a regular basis, first floor, second floor, and then what the capacity for safety is within this square footage, and making sure that and I know we are, you guys, that this is your job, but I'm just curious, because when we look at the renderings, the maps with all the different colors, it looks like a whole lot of activity in that building, but I also know that it's transitional at times, especially first floor. But I know that you've
And that's something that
shared
we can.
before.
Sorry.
but- No, do we have something, or can you share?
No, we will share something at the next, it depends on when we want to do another status update, but I anticipate we would have some more firmer numbers around that in February. Again, we're meeting with program leaders. Program leaders are charged with fleshing out their programming and what that looks like. We're having more conversations with program leaders to make sure that we talk about their schedules of the day, when students are coming in for Head Start, when students are coming in for adult ed, when students are coming in for our seat-based, right? So we're having a lot of discussions on their schedules and the flow and possibility for shared spaces. More of those things will be determined, but we need a little bit more time for that. And then we'll be able to come and give you some estimated numbers. So I anticipate with time somewhere in February for that will give us some time to have more conversations.
In actuality, I believe that the second floor has a little bit more stability in the amount of staff and students that are there. It's that first floor with all of our variety of programs, from STEPS down to early childhood and testing and all of those, that just give me a little concern to make sure that the flow of that first floor is manageable. Again, but we're down the road on that. That door closed, but just now that we're this close, maybe that extra wall or that extra hallway can still be, given or wider if you need down there. But just wanting to know how we're all looking in there.
No problem. And what I am appreciating is the fact that we are in December and talking about this. And again, that's why we're meeting more now, making sure that program leaders thoroughly think about programming that will give us a chance to start partnering and collaborating more to determine some of those things. We're really excited about it. We believe that, working together, we're going to be able to create a really amazing space for our students and all of the different programs that are going to be there. So great questions. And the good thing is we have time to continue to flesh these things out. Member LaFleur-Kim?
Yeah, just another follow-up question. I've just been looking at the most recent drawing that we got again, and I know we've gone over this before, and when we've toured it, it was of great interest to me, but just the entryways again, has anything changed with the entryways in terms of the separation with ALC, AEO, and then the other entryways?
The entryways haven't changed since the past
Okay.
renditions. No, the ALC program still has their own dedicated secure entry point for themselves, and as well as the building does as well. So those entry points have remained, yes.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional questions or green lights, thank you, everyone. And again, this, as we go, thank you for that. I know, well, you might as well stay because you're here for the next presentation too, right? At least Brian, right?
Can I just do a shout out to Pat, who's in the back there, and appreciate your leadership too. And I was really interested in preparing and stuff that in our August HR finance meeting, ICS gave us a 268-page kind of layout of all the construction and the materials and the contracts that were awarded. And we appreciate that too, and appreciate the strong tradition firms that were given or that earned the bid. So we appreciate that too.
And before we transition, so again, this is an example of what a summary report, how it would come. And to be honest, it probably still would be brief more. It shortens think about the length of that presentation. It may have been 20 minutes and then 20 more minutes of additional questions. We just have to think through, if it's something really meaty, then obviously that gives us pause to say maybe it's not a summary report. right? If it's something that we know there's going to be a lot of dialogue and we want a presentation, we just need to know that and we will do that. Some things may not require a lengthy conversation. I'll go back to update related to Key Zone. Maybe just information about Key Zone programming, how many students they're serving. That would be a very quick conversation that may take 5 minutes worth of questions. So thank you for the feedback, and as Chair shared, just please send that information to us, give us some feedback, and if we need to pivot, or if there's something that board desires that we not have these presentations, we will pivot and go back to what we've always done. This was an effort to think about a process improvement, to really provide spaces and for our program leaders to get in front of the board or to share information with the board. So thank you. Oh, now two lights. Member Loeffler Kemp and then Superintendent Agus.
And I'll just appreciate my fellow board members for when we have this type of presentation, that you keep asking those questions before the meeting so that we get the answers when we're here. I know many of us did our homework on this one, and so I found that really helpful. Just hearing some of the questions and then getting some of the answers ahead of the meeting as well. So appreciate folks doing your homework, especially I think for this type of summary of presentation. So thank you.
And just to share, because I think sometimes there's questions about why is this a different type of presentation that the public might have. We had a list of multiple board summary reports. I think there were four additional ones, right? So I think this was just used as an example because we knew it was timely and we knew that the board had questions on it. So this is why we pulled this one to do first. But we also have 4 more that are forecast for the next board meeting. What we might also do is include some of these in my weekly report, or maybe they're not always weekly, but my reports to the board. If I can share those as links there too, because I think even if we were to have 5 summary reports, it could be challenging for us to digest all of those in one board meeting. And I think as we're doing the committee, just a suggestion, as we do our committee of the whole agenda setting, maybe we're forecasting out what are the board summary reports we're thinking about for the next month. So it's not, so then it's not a week out that we're deciding what we're having or not having as summary reports. It's 5 or 6 weeks out that we're getting that down. I think that would be helpful for us, and then maybe we can even send them more than a week in advance so that the board can have a better idea of those.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item, and I do want to say thank you to our guests who did come. So just want to say thank you to our guests for attending as well. Again, as we do these summary reports, I will ask individuals they can join us in case you may ask them a question. So just let you know that for future. But thank you for coming. Continuing with the under our next presentation, we have under B, strategic plan alignment, improving systems. We have next up a presentation by our very own Executive Director Zunich, the bidding process as A, and then strategic growth and capacity planning.
Good evening. It was requested by the board that we review our bid process, and after speaking with the superintendent and assistant superintendent, we've asked Pat Ovram from ICS to join us tonight. He drove up from Minneapolis for this. We've worked with him a lot, and ICS has been really helping us a lot with the First Street build-out bids and any of our future LTFM that we have that the board approved. So we couldn't think of a better person to help us answer any questions.
We do have policies that we are following. One thing I have implemented with, HR Business Services, with Member Sadowski and Member Williams and Member Banks is we are being very transparent about any bids that we receive. So we are now putting all the tabulation sheets on Board Book. So yes, our Board Book has really expanded, but we're doing that to maintain a transparency with everybody. When we start paying bills, we are going to have the payroll documents that we receive from a subcontractor to maintain the effort to make sure everyone's being paid prevailing wage. And that is reviewed by ICS, it's reviewed by the Facilities Department. And so we will continue to put all of that on Board Book. And even if we have a $500 change order, we are going to put that on Board Book as well. So I would feel really bad if a board member came to me and said, I didn't even know about this. So, I drive myself by that. So we will maintain that transparency for you. Pat has provided their bid process at ICS, so he's going to review that. And then we, of course, will be open to any questions. Go ahead, Pat.
Do I have to push? Thanks for having me here tonight. The document that was included in your packet is really kind of our internal process for any projects with the districts we work with for working through major projects and helping them comply with public bid law and statute 471, which we're extremely familiar with, related to how public entities, whether they're school districts or cities or counties, any municipalities, need to procure things. So this document is really relevant for any projects anticipated to be over $175,000 in value, which, for better or worse, just about every project these days seems to be in that realm. And so just to walk through this, I'll walk through it real quickly, and then I'm here to help try to answer any questions. Again, this happens to be labeled Delivery Method Program Management. That's really how your consultants are structured, whether we're serving in a role as program manager or a construction manager. Either way, with projects over $175,000, you're required to solicit public bids and then to award those to the lowest qualified bidder. And ultimately, as a public entity, we help develop and have you execute prime contracts with all of those different trade contractors and vendors and suppliers. And by prime contract, that means that you as a district are actually holding and signatory to those contracts with each individual trade contractor, whether it's an electrician or a mechanical contractor and so on. We're managing and administering those on your behalf. So just to walk through this really quickly, prior to things going out for bid, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the giant specification books and then the plan documents, which we call construction documents. Early in the process, we're preparing those documents and we're developing what are called the front-end specifications. And those are really outlining the general requirements and general conditions associated with the contract that will ultimately be executed. Much of that language is pretty canned template through the AIA series of agreements, which again, you're probably familiar with. Some of the things that we're at task to do are to implement any pieces that might be project specific or client specific, district specific in this case. So whether those are allowable hours for work or details related to the schedule or tax status or how we expect contractors to access the site, who's responsible for temporary toilets, who's responsible for temporary, all of those different kind of ground rules, establishing the field of play for contractors. Included in that are, in your case, based on your existing district policies are, that's where we would include prevailing wage rate requirements and then post what those wage rates are and then how they need to follow through with certified payroll and comply with that process. Once those are developed, our internal process is very typically that those hit the streets for bids, if you will. We do that a number of different ways. There are still local and regional builders exchanges where those get advertised and posted for folks to access and ultimately decide whether or not they want to put their numbers and bids together. We've got a web-based platform called Procore that we track all of our projects with and so on. We tend to have a big pool and database of contractors that are constantly accessing our site to look for what we have coming up for our clients, and they use that as a venue for getting those documents and putting numbers together. We send out invites to our known contractor networks and make phone calls. We have folks that are literally, doing whatever we possibly can to encourage involvement and interest in the projects. We host pre-bid either meetings or walkthroughs to answer any questions and to, again, encourage involvement. Really, the goal is to maximize the number of qualified bids that you receive on bid day, and therefore to try to, squeeze whatever value we can out of getting those low bids. Down partway, we established that bid date, and on that bid date, again, many of you are probably familiar with that process. Sealed bids are received at a certain time and date and location. Those are opened and read out loud and tabulated. And then that's followed up typically by a week or two of our crew going through their post-bid interviews with the apparent low bidders and kind of qualifying those bids, meeting with contractors or talking to those contractors, making sure they understood. And we're inclusive of everything that was required for the project. Ultimately, we develop a recommendation letter to submit to the board, and that is a summary of kind of the bid tabulations that Simone noted, as well as our recommended low qualified bidders for you to consider awarding contracts to. So that's this in a nutshell. Then ultimately, once those bids are approved by the district, we go to work and actually develop those contracts on your behalf and get those executed by the different parties and move forward. That was probably a lot really quick, so if there are questions on that,
Member Lawful?
please let me know.
So this has been really a great presentation, to tell you the truth, just to hear from Pat, actually, because as I was preparing for this presentation, I visited ICS. I mean, we've worked with ICS for my 8 years here.
Yes.
You have been
Yep.
our relationship, but it was really the first time I kind of dug into your website, into the background, and just started to think that, your role and especially now our First Street project, and that led me to the document from August 6th, which had all of your contractors and all of the materials and all that went out, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. So my big aha was that you are shepherding our contracts and our bids and our materials along with Brian, but, we've hired your company to do that. So
lot
that
of
was kind of my big aha.
A lot of
oh.
stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah,
along
which was reassuring to me. So that's kind of my first aha. And then I really liked, and could you go back to it? You said prevailing wage once in your opening, and then you came back to it with, part of your presentation, which I don't, my print is too small for me to read. But you came back to it to talk a little bit about what you put on your actual bidding documentation that's on our website, and you talked about, what are those rates? So on our bidding projects, prevailing wage for what Duluth is going to consider in this bidding is this. So they know going into bidding that our prevailing wage is, so can you tell me a little bit about how you determine
Yep.
what a project at the First Street Building's prevailing wage would be?
Right, and so a couple of things. In that front-end specification, prevailing wage rates are certainly one thing that is included. As a district, you have specific insurance requirements and specific, all of those kind of ground rules are established and clearly outlined in there, and what limits you require for insurance here might be different than here, and so we need to track and make sure all of those things are considered and included. Prevailing wage rates are actually established by each county and where the county is, where the project is residing. So it's not by the district, it's not by the city, it's actually by the county. And it happens to be the wage rate that appears most often within that county. So the counties are actually tracking all of the projects that are happening within its geography. And that's how those prevailing wage rates are established. 9 times out of 10, probably even more often than that, those prevailing wage rates are synonymous with union scale. And that's because, for instance, in your county, a lot of the projects are being completed with union contractors or non-union contractors that pay those wage rates regardless of whether they are required to with a prevailing wage requirement or just to keep in business and maintain a workforce, if that makes sense. So, yeah, prevailing wage rates are
Okay,
actually
that's-
established by the
yeah,
county.
thank
And
you.
they're literally, I wish I had a spec book with, but literally outlined by trades. So it'll say for an apprentice electrician, it's this much hourly and this much in fringe and benefits. For a journeyman electrician, it's this much and this much. For a laborer, it's this much and this. It's literally trade by trade by trade. It's an hourly rate and benefits are fully outlined, as well as the ratios of workforce. So if a crew happens to have 8 folks on site, it will dictate what those proportions are, how many are allowed to be journeyman versus apprentice versus.
And do those workers, those 8 workers, sign in
Yes.
to you? And so that's a record that
Yep.
you keep and that our district has
That's
to make
full-
sure that the
yep,
prevailing
It's fully
wage?
automated now, and so we'll receive what's called certified payroll and with their draw requests, and that's reconciled on an ongoing basis.
And then I just want, my last thing is, I really, really like what the Finance and Business Committee, along with our leadership, have done with putting bidding on our website. And as a board member, I can go in and see projects that you've put up. I think you just put up something in the last week or so. I can't remember now. I was there this afternoon. Why can't I remember what's on the website for a bid right now? I think it's due soon. It's not a roof.
I'm
What
going to
is it?
look right now.
Lighting, maybe?
I think it's for new furniture at
Yes,
Homecroft.
it is. That's what it is, at Homecroft, the library. Yeah,
We
okay.
just got done with the lighting bids.
Yep, you did. End of-
Once you
yeah.
awarded them, then we took them down.
Okay,
But
yep.
we'll be keep putting them up.
What I think we need to do, and I know I have been as a board member when asked by different companies within our city, is we have it on our website. There should be no need for you to be surprised that there was an opportunity to put in a bid for your company because it's right out there. Plus, you just mentioned all the places within your scope as ICS that you connect with all of your connections to get as many bids as you can.
Absolutely. It's
So,
it's
out
literally
there.
full-time
Okay.
jobs for
So,
folks to get the
There's
the
no
word out.
excuses. Okay, good to hear.
Superintendent Magus?
Sure, just thinking about, sometimes we hear, and we want to make sure that we are sound stewards of our finance, but we also want to make sure that we're treating workers fairly and with the prevailing wage aspect. Sometimes we also hear concerns that maybe other contractors don't have the same safety record or the, safety, like maybe they're able to charge less because they're not focusing on safety, and we might have concerns there, or maybe even that they're not really like a real union or things like that. Just wondering, how do we safeguard against that with this process, and how do we make sure that we're keeping safety of the workers working at our sites is a high priority, and also making sure that the people who are purporting to be unions are actual unions and not maybe less than or different than a regular union.
Yep, so a few questions in there. There are a number of different kind of union organizations and classifications. Requiring prevailing wage is not the same as requiring all of those contractors to be signatory union contractors. From a safety standpoint, probably kind of belt and suspenders here. We are pretty arduous with our post-bid reviews and going through and interviewing and talking to those contractors to establish, expectations. In addition to that, if we are serving as your program manager or construction manager, we've actually got full-time safety crews, not full-time on every project, but we've got a dedicated safety officer, Donnie Hines, who has 30 years with Minnesota OSHA. And we are actually facilitating weekly toolbox talks and safety meetings and mock OSHA reviews. And we've got thorough processes that are implemented on every project on your behalf to try to safeguard and to kind of belt and suspenders the safety aspect on projects.
Thank you.
Member Lowfold?
I was hoping that somebody, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find my question, but it was a good question.
I can go someone else for now. Member Meixel?
Yeah, you just touched upon in your post-bid interview process. Is there ever a time during those conversations where you recognize that it might not be a good fit both ways? And what is that process like then to take away the bid, or how does that work?
Yep, so good question. Each bid that is received is required to have a bid bond and a performance and payment bond. And so those are kind of two different things. A bid bond is kind of your insurance policy that that contractor has put good faith effort into developing their bid and understands the scope and is providing that for you in good faith. Performance and payment bond is kind of your insurance policy that they're promising to pay their vendors and suppliers and so on. That said, oftentimes we may be reviewing scope with a contractor either on the phone or in person and identify a gap or an overlap, or a contractor has made an honest mistake and said, hey, you know what? We were scrambling and putting our numbers together and errantly forgot to include a number for structural steel or whatever it might be. In those cases, we will bring those to the owner's attention and then decide how to handle it. And there's a couple of different ways to handle it. Oftentimes, contractors may come to us before that meeting if they've made a mistake like that and said, hey, just so you know, we can't stand by our bid. As an owner, you have the right to either just reject that bid or to reject that bid and actually hold on to their bid bond and take that bid bond as a penalty for them withdrawing their bid. Oftentimes, those bid bonds are 5% or equivalent to the bid price, and so that's kind of, again, your insurance policy on them doing due diligence before they submit a bid. So yes, if we find that a contractor isn't qualified based on an error, based on a gap in scope, we handle that kind of on a case-by-case basis and may recommend rejecting this bid and taking the second lowest qualified bid, or we may take a work scope and decide, you know what, it's better that we reject all of the bids in this work scope and rebid it.
Thank you for that. So the bonds are similar to like if purchasing a house, the earnest money that you put
Exactly.
down when you're making your offer. Okay, thank you for that. When I look at the district's policy 726 on the bidding process, we as a school board are able to reject a bid for 3 different reasons. And the second one is if the low bidder is determined as not reliable. So is it my understanding then is that during that post-bid interview process is when you would flesh that out?
Correct.
And make that recommendation to us?
Correct.
If you're in those conversations. Okay, thank you.
Member Sadowski?
I'm going to take it one step further. So we award the bid, and they gave us the bid bond, which is, they put a good bid in good faith, like you kind of outlined, but I found it interesting looking at all the different change orders, which I know are a normal part of construction. I get that. But are there ever, I'm assuming you keep an eye on those change orders, though, when you're looking back at the bid, and especially for bigger projects? Like, are there times where, I would just assume it's good to keep a look at those change orders and see how many are coming in and what's reasonable. I'm assuming that you're the group that can determine what's reasonable and what's not based on the bid bond.
Absolutely. And if you, so there tend to be many perceptions when it comes to the term change order, and well, all change orders are bad. They're not. So we're very proactively tracking change orders, and oftentimes they get categorized into 3 spots. There are unforeseens, things that are exposed during a project like the D&T project, right, where a wall is opened up and nothing was there, right? There are change orders that are generated because something was omitted from the plans. And there are change orders that might be driven by a request from the owner saying, you know what, we'd really like to move this door and shift this door, and in order to do that, would you go get a price from the contractors to do that? And so as long as you are maintaining value in any of those cases, change orders aren't necessarily bad, right? If it's enhancing or benefiting the ultimate project, sometimes change orders are good things. So every change order that comes in, change order request that is coming in, our team is actually doing their own cost estimate to that change. If needed, we're going out and checking those either with our internal database or other contractors. In those front-end specifications, we actually outline what allowable markup and profit contractors are allowed on change orders, and so we're reviewing those a few different ways before you ever see them as a recommended change order to award.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Member Lofold?
I remembered my questions. I have 2 of them, actually. I'm just curious, again, that I thought putting the bidding thing on the website was so helpful for a board member that doesn't sit on finance necessarily. But one of the things I didn't know in the bidding process is that you have these people that are probably considering putting in a bid, and they come and visit the site. I saw it when you did the lighting at both those buildings, that you offered an opportunity. Do most have to do that in order to give a fine bid? You'd think that they'd have to visit the site that they're going to put a contract in. So is that a normal thing? That's and then again, the other thing about sealed beds, when you open them, do many people come to that opening of the bids? Are they sitting there watching you open them? Just out of curiosity.
Generally, on the smaller projects, we have an invitation for them to do a walkthrough. On bigger projects, it's a mandatory walkthrough. So
okay.
you can't bid on it until you were there. Like our roofing projects, they're always mandatory. So if you want to bid on it, you have to be there. So that's one of our requirements. What was the other?
The opening of the bids, do
Oh, the
people come and
opening of the
watch you?
bids. When we had the D&T, or the First
The big
Street
one, that
build-out
August one?
opening, this room was about half full of contractors. Yes, they all come in to see where they've landed and make sure, that sometimes they come here to see how bad they've blown their bid, or, if they
They're learning.
way overdid
Yeah,
it
yeah.
or whatever. So, yeah, and then we always have at least 2 witnesses from the school district, And then with the projects that we have going on, ICS also has 2 representatives there. So when we're all done with that, we go over all the bid tabs again to make sure we all have the same number, and then they get evaluated.
And I would add on those pre-bid meetings or walkthroughs, as you can imagine, a project like D&T, messy remodel, very important for contractors to be there and to understand existing conditions and so on. If it happens to be a brand-new ground-up building, a lot less for them to see, but a couple of things happen at those pre-bid meetings. Yes, we definitely are very deliberate in walking through and exposing and showing them existing conditions, but we're also taking the first chunk of time at that meeting and being very deliberate to walk through those general conditions and general requirements and kind of the ground rules. So we're spoon-feeding them those front-end specifications at that walkthrough to establish expectations. We're letting them know these are the allowable working hours, this is how you're expected to access the site, this is where your staging is going to be. We're kind of connecting the dots for them at that meeting as well.
And then the question that many of us on the board have had in the past, and I saw it on one of the contracts, I think, in the packet from that September meeting was, and I don't want to name the companies because I just don't, but there was a bid for something, and one bid, there was just 2 bidders, and one was for $189,435, and one was for $457,800. And we've often wondered, and this might be going in the weeds, and maybe we don't necessarily need to know this, but we do kind of think, why? Why such a big gap? And like Brian just said, maybe they came to that opening of that bidding and went, ooh, we really blew it on that contract, but why such a large gap? And we do see it from time to time.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Whether it's 2 bids or 8, you might have very tight bids or you may have a spread. And when we see those in our role, if there happens to be a wide spread, that's telling us to focus on that and figure out why. And is it because different contractors interpreted something differently in the documents or made an assumption that others didn't? Or is it a contractor that is completely full of work, but out of respect for us asking, submitted a bid? Or you know, it's those types of dynamics that come into play. Maybe I'll get lucky and be the only bidder and I'll get it for $400,000, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. Thanks.
Member Lafferkamp?
Thank you. I also had turned into our policy 726 as I was kind of preparing for this discussion as well. And one of the questions I had that I don't think has been answered yet was with the withdrawal of bids and the conditions under which a bidder may withdraw a bid shall be detailed in the plans and specifications of the project. And can you I was just curious, what might be some of those reasons why they would withdraw a bid and at what point?
Those would typically fall back to a couple of those instances I mentioned earlier. Just after bid date, if a contractor realized, oh, we made a mistake and we're requesting a withdrawal or bid. Oftentimes in the market, a lot of bids are happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and maybe a contractor was submitting bids on 3 projects on a Tuesday, and they happen to get 2, and they realize they don't have enough manpower to handle the 3rd, and so they're respectfully asking to withdraw their bid, or, you know, many different reasons, but those would be the instances I can kind of think of.
I have a question, and I would like Pat or Brian to address. Sometimes we see on bids, they have the base bid, and then underneath they have the alternate bid price. So can you speak to that? Because when we accept the bids, or excuse me, when the board does, we go by the base bid, correct? We've had questions in the past, what is the alternate price?
Feel free to add to this. I'm hogging the microphone. Alternates are established before, you know, as the documents are being developed for a number of different reasons. It may be because the project's pushing up against budget, and so the owner wants to see what specific elements of scope are costing, and then they can choose to award them if they can afford them or award them if there's good value. If it is a roofing bid, for instance, you might get a base bid for certain roof sections and an alternate for another 1 or 2 or 3 sections, if you have money. You may also see an alternate in that case for a unit price for removal and replacement of wet insulation, or removal and replacement of cutting and patching concrete floor is a unit price that we often see as an alternate. And so in that case, as a project moves forward, if there's somebody doing a bunch of roofing and they run into wet insulation, we've predetermined what they're able to charge us to remove and replace that wet insulation. Or in the case of the basement downtown, we may have predetermined how much a square foot they are able to charge us for cutting and patching flooring, depending on if, so a mason may give us a unit price per square foot for cut and patch. A plumber will then come in and say, hey, we need to run a pipe from here to here. And so we've kind of pre-negotiated or pre-established what those are able to charge.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, I want to say thank you again, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Next up, board, we have under strategic plan alignment, number 2, supporting every student. Nope, let me go back. Improving systems. So number 1, improving systems. Part B, strategic growth and capacity planning. And Superintendent Magus will lead that presentation.
Thank you. Let me just cast a moment.
Let's go do it, Sal.
And thanks, team, for your presentation, for answering all our questions. All right. So, first of all, I'd like to share that we have a problem, but it's a good problem. And that's that we have a lot of students and families that are choosing Duluth Public Schools as their first choice of places to attend. And our enrollment is increasing, which again is a positive. But it is creating some stressors, as we pointed out in some of my superintendent's reports and other areas, in that so the space is getting tight in a number of places. I was just out at Homecroft yesterday, for instance, meeting with their staff, and I know we're setting up an opportunity to meet there for a meet and confer as well, just to talk about that space, because there's no more space for teachers' lounge. There's difficulty in having co-located services like mental health services from the community. There are a number of different things that are getting pinched space-wise there. We also know Lester Park, for instance, is another location. Then we were in our quality leadership team meetings with our labor management for middle school and high school, and there was additional conversations about class size, particularly Ordine we were talking about, Ordine being, class size being tight, and other areas. Just that even if we were wanting to add additional teachers, we don't have the space in the classrooms to do so given our current spaces. We also know Duluth is changing quite a bit. We have a number of new housing developments throughout the city. We see things from the area at Hawk Ridge to the Eris apartments right here in the center of town to the Spirit Valley developments out there. There are developments all over town, and we really need to get our hands around where is the city growing. So really when we think about strategically, what are we doing to think about our growth? What are we doing to think about our capacity? And one of the first things that we really need to consider is defining our current reality. And so to define our current reality, we're really looking at and we're proposing that we do a demographics and site enrollment and capacity study. And the purpose for that would be to responsibly manage our positive enrollment trends and resulting facility demands to ensure future student success. And really, as I mentioned, we've had those positive enrollment pieces, but really we need objective data. The last time that we looked at our demographics study as a district was in 2018, I believe, and we saw some growth in different areas. There are probably still some things that hold true from what we saw in 2018, but this is over 7 years later, and it's important for us to look at new developments and where we're at. The goal of this study would be to provide critical demographic foundation needed to develop a sustainable and equitable strategic capacity plan that meets the needs of our students, families, staff, and community. So really thinking about if our demographics are changing, if our enrollment is changing, what does that mean for us, and how can we make sure that we are adjusting? So really, what are we going to do to lay the foundation for that strategic growth? I think it's important as a board, you've always focused on proactivity and being proactively planned in what we do. So thinking about how are we making sure that we're thinking about that capacity. We also pride ourselves in being having data-driven decisions, making sure that we're using objective decisions rather than gut feeling or emotion to make our decisions. But then that we're also really being thoughtful about optimizing our resources, thinking about our facilities as one of our most important resources. We have millions and millions of dollars in our schools, and we are the stewards of those resources, so we need to think about how are we going to optimize those resources to the best way possible. You also see that we want to make sure that we're understanding that increasing student population. In doing a capacity assessment, we want to look at each of our schools. I know sometimes all of our schools feel a little bit tight, but sometimes we expand into areas with different programs, different uses, and really thinking about what is the true capacity. And thinking about, for instance, when I was a middle school principal, sometimes the facilities people would tell me that, oh, you're only at 75% capacity or 80% capacity. And I would think, well, we're using all the rooms. But when it comes down to it, you can also think about what would it look like if all rooms were being used during people's prep periods. And so there's some things that are not always optimal as far as how we want to operate, but then there is also ways that we have to think about how, like when it comes down to it, what is our maximum capacity and what is our optimal capacity if we're giving people the space they need. We also are fortunate to have a lot of additional services and partnerships in our schools. We think about our partnerships with, tonight we're talking about Key Zone. We've talked about the use of the Boys and Girls Club. We think about our community schools initiatives that we have at Myers-Wilkins and at Lincoln Park and at Denfeld. Those are all great services and just examples of many, many services that we have in the district, but they do take space. And so thinking about how are we making sure that we have space for those, for the main core programming we have, but then how are we also being thoughtful stewards of our space when we're thinking about those partnerships. And really we also have to think about how are we identifying gaps, thinking about pinpointing specific attendance areas that are that may over time be over use or over capacity, and other areas that might be under capacity. This would allow us to think about future capacity solutions effectively. And really, this is a precursor to future action. The foundational demographic data is a central first step before we can deeply engage the community to develop viable options for a comprehensive capacity plan. So that's an important piece, and I want to stress this. Anthony was pointing out as well that this is, when we were going through the slides and thinking, this is something I want to make sure that is duly noted, that in this is a first step of additional work that needs to be done. We need to, after we look at the problem, and it's a positive problem in many respects, but as we further define what that problem is and what our capacity is, then the next step is really to deeply engage our community. And I think that really thinking about how do we do that thoughtfully, how do we do that in a way that gets all voices out there, how do we do that in a way that is maybe a reset from previous work that might have been done, and also how do we look at some of that previous history too and learn from it. Those are things that we need to do as we continue looking forward. And as an aside, just you see the graphics that represent some of the things that we're talking about here. It's an exciting thing, and now with artificial intelligence, you can click a button that says beautify this slide, and it gives you some of these graphics. So you see the little graphic with the data, and then you're engaging the community and looking at space. That's just an example of how in a couple of seconds you can make your slides a lot more attractive and hopefully engaging. Just being honest about the use of that technology. But again, thinking about how are we defining our current and future needs, we need to make sure that we have accurate enrollment projections. I think right now a lot of times we look at what are our current cohorts, and we hope we know what's going to happen, and we have an idea of what's going to happen, but then we get a surprise. Think about, again, Homecroft. I'm going to use that again as kind of our poster school today. That used to be one of our smallest elementary schools. Actually just prior to me coming here, it was one of our smallest elementaries, and our principal had additional duties because it was a small elementary, and now I believe it's our second largest. With the transfer out of Lowell, it might even be, it's up there as one of our top 1 or 2 schools as far as size. So we need to make sure that we have accurate enrollment projections, and that we're really thinking about where it is that students are living, and where are those, looking at the previous demographic studies, and I shared a copy of it at our work session just so you could see what one would look like. They have basically heat maps within showing where are the populations more dense and increasing with younger students, and where are they slowing down. So looking at that distribution, it's interesting to see even within one school boundary zone, there are areas that are cooler and have fewer students that are coming through the households, and then there are other areas that are just really heated on the map, and you see that there are lots of students that are coming from those areas. And when we think about that, when we think about programming, when we think about boundaries, when we think about that capacity, that's all important. And then again, as we've talked about, the impact of short and long-term development. We see ideas for projects coming forward. You know, think about Incline Village, that was going to have thousands of people. That's currently on pause, but who knows, within a year or two, we might have something else going up there. And then we also have other projects that we weren't necessarily anticipating that are coming forward in different areas, as we've mentioned. And we need to think about what are those impacts. We also want to work with the city, and not just city, but cities, thinking about Rice Lake and other townships and communities, making sure that we are talking with their planners, so that we have that factored into the capacity work as well. And then really thinking about what would the next steps look like for this process. We would look at a RFP process, which is request for proposals. We have our bidding on the site, so we can have that posted right there. So we would have a comprehensive third-party demographic study. It's important for us to have a third party do this, because in somebody who has the expertise, because this is not something that it's a deep science as opposed to something that we can take educated guesses at. So we want to make sure that the quality of the definition could really hinge on whether or not we have the space we need in the future. So we want to make sure that we invest in making sure it's done well. We would be working with our facilities department. The facilities department and the capacity review, that's something that we believe we can do a lot of that work internally, but we'd want to interface that work with the group that would be doing the demographic study. And then really thinking about defining the district capacity, thinking about what is the total operational and functional capacity of the district's building portfolio, because we have to a degree, I would say we have that we're a little over capacity on the east side, and we're a little under capacity in certain schools on the west side. Not to make a broad sweeping judgment, but that's a little bit of what we see. But we need to look at what is the total capacity. And there are other buildings that we don't think about as necessarily regular school spaces like Rock Ridge, you know, places like that. There we have our also partnerships with residential and those sites. We want to consider what is the capacity there and what is our use there as well. And then we would be bringing, there would be board review and action. We would be bringing the findings to the board upon completion, and then talking to the board and discussing what are our next steps as we engage the community in this important work. So with that, I will open it up for questions, and I'd be glad to explain any more that the board would want to discuss.
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
This is just a general statement, but thank you again for this overview. And I know there's been conversation around demographic studies, and I certainly was asked that during campaigning and said, yes, I would hope we would do a demographic study. So
Good.
glad that's where we're looking. And I know since I've been on the board, I found that really helpful in the past when we was getting that third-party demographic study. And what I think surprised a lot of people, including the public, who, I mean, it's really helpful for the public to learn from those studies as well, where our population is. And the fact that we have a lot of families in the east end of town, and that's one of the reasons why our schools are at capacity, you know, something like that, that's the reason. And so I look forward to, and would definitely support kind of moving forward with this process. And also, I know in the past when we've had those demographic studies that we as a board have had a full presentation on it, and that's built in here as well. So I appreciate this presentation, and certainly from going through this in the past as a board member, would love us to continue to move forward as this is laid out. So no really comment, more just kind of reaction to your presentation.
Member Lawford?
I agree that, you know, it's nice to get the presentation. We support going for this as our first step towards capacity and programming. My overall reaction is that the board review and action, the last element on the last page, I get nervous. I mean, I don't want to go into the weeds. We will get all of this information from the experts, but I'm really hoping that we are involved in each sort of step along the way. And then, yes, I know at the end that the board is going to approve what we're going to go forward with, but we will have opportunity, right, to be engaged in this process in the most healthy and respectful way. Let the experts do it. But it just concerns me that, and I know you don't mean this, I know we will be, because we have been on every other major issue within our district, but I don't want the board review and action to be like, I mean, it has to be the last step, but it makes it look like that's the only time we're gonna like get information. I don't know, just picky.
If I could comment, I think you might be thinking about like what are the subsequent steps after, and I'm not trying to read your mind, but so we will be doing the demographic study, we'll share that with the board, and then we would probably, my guess, and just to be transparent, is that we would want to have a deep community engagement process after that, or with the data that we have, so that we can discuss what are we going to do as a community based on this, right? And that would be something that I want the board very deeply involved in. So as we're doing, like if we're thinking about programming, if we're thinking about, you know, hypothetical boundary changes, if we're thinking about what can this, you know, potential construction, potential levies or things like that, definitely there's this gets us to a point where we would have we would be seeking a significant additional board input on where do we go from here. This would be kind of coming to some degree of crossroads and saying, this is our current reality, where do we want to go with it? Maybe the demographic study would show this is just a blip and everything's going to level out and population is going to drop, and maybe we don't need to do anything. But my guess is that we are probably going to have to really think about how do we engage the community and think about where do we go from here. Thinking about that Homecroft conversation, they're worried about next year. If they have another bubble with another kindergarten, how are we going to make that work for next year? And I think getting those stories out to the community too, so that the community understands where we're at as a school district and where we're at as a community. We've got a good problem, but we need to think about how do we resolve it. Does that help?
You know, being the board chair for 5 years or so, I suppose he does kind of, he's able to see that, I think this is really where Jill is asking that question. So you're right, you're right. I just have two others, just a quick RFP, just will the board know when you're going out for those and how you do that? And that's a bidding process?
It's a
Sort of?
bidding, a request for proposal process. Basically, people would submit proposals, and it's more of like a project plan, and then
Yeah.
based on the project plan, it would meet certain parameters, but we would also look at what is the reputation of the entity that's doing it? What are they there might be vastly different proposals. Somebody might just say, hey, we can provide you a pamphlet of data based on what we see. Others might be able to provide deeper, richer information. So we'd want to consider all of that when we look at what moves forward. Anything you would add?
Once we determine what the bid needs to look like, it will get published, most likely for 2 weeks. For instance, when we did our transportation, we knew it was going to be 4 or 5 million, so we published it once a week for a whole month. So it depends on what we anticipate the cost with, but it will be published.
And I don't believe the cost of this will be at the threshold of needing board approval. Of course, we would be sharing information, everything would be completely public, but I would suggest that we move, unless there's strong objection to us moving in this direction, that I would suggest that we get ready and put out our RFPs in the nearer future rather than wait, because I think that it will take time for us to do the demographic study. It'll take time to engage the community. It'll take time for us afterwards to determine what do we need to do. I anticipate that there may be a need, a hypothetical need for. Let me just say this carefully. I want us to be able to have a meaningful conversation with the community, and if the community decides that they want to see certain things or do certain things, as far as maybe hypothetically, maybe they want to, maybe there's a decision that we need to have a K-8 school built in a certain area, or maybe there's a need for a boundary change or things like that. I want us to make sure that we have the time to do it right, and to really, I think it's important for the community to, for us to work with the community in this process in a way that gives us time to adjust to these needs and the change in needs in a transparent and thoughtful way.
Member Sadowski?
Thank you for the presentation and the information. I definitely would also be supportive of a demographic study. I also just wanted to kind of, as I've been listening to this and looking over the materials before the meeting and during the meeting, just have been reflecting on the last 4 years of serving on the school board. I've really appreciated we've been very strategic about like our programming in our schools too. So when I think about growth and capacity, I really, and you touched on it today too, like in our schools, having other community resources for mental health, partners in our schools, and how important that is. But also, even in the last year, we had to make some decisions regarding our Spanish immersion and the programming and capacity there. I just appreciate the holistic way that we look at growth and capacity in general. And I know that we'll continue to do that A demographic study is one piece of the puzzle, but I know you touched on it a little bit. We have a lot of other pieces of that puzzle that we will look at together, and I also appreciate the focus on engaging our community. I think that's really important. We see trends in our community too, looking at other trends in our community. For example, one that comes to mind for me is a focus in outdoor education. We live in Duluth, Minnesota. Those programs are really popular. And we see that for the early childhood. So just looking at those trends too, I think will be really important. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, we will go to our next presentation. So if we could have the Teacher Learning Equity team who will present the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness report. Board, this is deemed our public meeting for the 25-26 Annual Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness. So Brenda Sparts and team, come on up. And I'll have the team introduce themselves as they come up. While they're getting themselves situated, I just want the board and the community to just to remind everyone that formerly we used to call this the world's best workforce. So if you ever heard that term, the world's best workforce, it has evolved to become the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Plan. And I'll turn it over to the team just to introduce yourselves, please.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Sparts. I'm the Director of Elementary Education here in Duluth Public Schools. I'll be facilitating this, but this presentation, the data, the information, the plan that was shared with you took a lot of people and a lot of input. So I might be the facilitator, but surely it took a lot of people to put this together. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that. And some of the key people are sitting here with me, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Good evening, Dale Uzelman. I am the Elementary Academic MTSS and Curriculum and Instruction Coordinator.
Good evening, everyone. Jen Larva, Director of Secondary Education. Do you want to tell them why Julie's not here? I am going to let you know that Dale's counterpart, Julie Stauber, would have been here tonight, but she has a family emergency, so she is unavailable.
I'm Danette Sebo, Principal and Special Assignment, Current Technical Education, College and Career Readiness, and some other things that are irrelevant right now.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Barbara Eckberg. I'm the Director of Head Start and the Early Learning Services Coordinator.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just run through some information that explains what this is and kind of a process that we took this year in getting the information for what you're going to see. The Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Plan is directed through legislation, as you know. And last year it changed from the world's best workforce to the what we affectionately call the CACR. But the emphasis changed a little bit. It used to be read well by third grade and some other goals. They've really changed it to have an academic achievement focus and preparation for what are kids going to do after graduation? How are we preparing them to be those lifelong learners and to be successful out in the real world? So that's kind of a change of mindset around the new requirements. You give us the permission to develop this on your behalf. It's a long-term strategic plan. It has 5 goals that are dictated by legislation, and so I'll show you what those goals are. Number 1, all children ready for school. That's really how do we prepare kids in our district to be ready for kindergarten. All racial economic achievement gaps between student groups close. All students are ready for career and college. All students graduate from high school. And then students are prepared to be lifelong learners. That last one is an interesting twist, and we've tried to figure that out. I think the state is still trying to figure out what that means, but we will show you our take on that as we get there. The Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Plan really should, and part of legislation says it will align with our strategic roadmap. And so if you read the, I don't know, 30-ish page full plan, you'll see that the headers in there for the strategies that we use to address the goals are aligned to the roadmap. We thought that was the most effective way to make sure that alignment happened. And so supporting every student, advancing equity, improving systems, you'll see that those strategies are broken down into how we address those things in the strategic roadmap. Our process this year, of course, last year we renovated the whole plan, going from the world's best workforce to the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Plan took a whole revamp. And so this year we took that plan that was new last year, we reviewed it and updated strategies with some new things that we're doing, continuation of work, the results from last year. So you're going to see that it looks similar to last year, but last year was actually the big revamp. Then we developed that draft. That was based on, well, we took it to a principal meeting, we took it through to the TLE team. I'm trying to think of what else we did. We took it to lots of places and got various district committees and groups to weigh in on the strategies and those goals. We took all that feedback and incorporated that into a draft. There are some annual meetings that must happen. This is one of them, a public meeting and a forum. It's usually a board meeting, and so that this one qualifies for that. And also district advisory committee to take a look at it and give input. We did that on the 24th of November. We took that draft that was developed to that team. I will say, Member Mike Sell came, and from the presentation that you saw, I changed some things because of trying to present it to them. I was like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense, or that was too much, or so you'll see that this is a little bit different from, but that's the idea, is to make sure that as we go along, we're just improving in continuous improvement mode of getting it to a better space. What you have there is what we deem as our final draft. Of course, you're going to approve this, and we'll get it posted to our website as the final draft. But pretty much what you see is probably what it is. Then, like I said, the last thing is to post it to our website. That's a requirement. And then submission of a summary report. The summary report is a reflection on last year, and that goes to MDE. So the last thing you're not going to see, it's literally a website where we go and we enter information on last year's results, and you submit it. And so actually, we did that earlier, so that piece is done. So on the next few slides, actually kind of several slides, are results from last school year. This is where you're going to see a little bit different from the advisory committee, because I broke it down just a little bit more, so it's kind of maybe easier to understand. The first one aligns with goal 1 of last year's 24-25 CACR plan. And so you'll see that 85% of our 4-year-olds participating in Duluth Public Schools preschools will meet the benchmarks in 4 out of 5 of the domains that they measure. I added gold stars to things that are positive and increased. You can see that in every single domain, we had significant increases. And as a matter of fact, in each one, we went over that 85% or met the 85%. So I would say Barbara and her team last year really shine, and they did meet their goals, and that's a really positive thing for, the rest of their education journey. So that's really great. The second goal is about reduction of achievement gaps. We had a reading goal in last year's Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Plan. We did not have a math goal. However, in here I put both reading and math achievement data because I thought you would be interested in it. So this first slide here, it's about reading, MCAs, and how did Duluth perform compared to Minnesota on average across the state. Duluth usually outperforms the state in many areas. This is no different. 55.7% of our kids were considered proficient, and that was significantly over the state. We did not make this goal because we didn't meet 63.8%, so our own gains, but we did pretty well according to the state. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, highlighted. This has to do with ethnic and race groups. How did we do last year with reading compared to the state? You can see American Indian, Hispanic, and white students outperform the state on average. Black students and 2 or more students, those groups did not in reading. That's just the outcomes that we had last year, and just wanted to make sure that you have this information. This is comparison groups. So if we're talking about white students versus non-white students and the gap between those groups, you can see here how Minnesota did, and then you can see how we did with those groups. And then special education and not special education. What comparison groups does is it takes all kids who test and then pulls them apart into 2 opposite groups, and then compares the gap between them. And that's what these comparison groups are about. So, and then free and reduced lunch price, kids who qualify for free and reduced price, and then kids who do not qualify for free and reduced price lunches, and the gap between them. You can see that on free and reduced lunch prices, we do better than the state on average in the reading. And then not special education, and then both pieces of whites and non-whites, we outperform the state in reading, so those are all celebrations for us. This is math, same type of information. You can see that we do just about the same as the state. So we're performing right along with the average of the state in math overarchingly. Again, we didn't have a math goal, but I just thought you guys would be interested in math to see how we're doing. This has to do with the race and ethnic groups. Math is not our, according to our data, it's just, we're not as strong in math as we are in reading. I think we all understand that because the last few years we've really pushed reading like significantly. We have such a push in the state for literacy. And you're seeing the results of that in our data. And then the next, this is comparison groups. So how do those opposite groups do and the gaps between them? And here you can see that there are larger gaps in math than there are in reading. And so math will be a focus. 2 years from now, we'll have to do these standards and do the same thing we're doing with literacy, but it'll go to an emphasis on math. Is that 2 years? 2 years from now. And so I think we're going to have a big shift in talking a lot about math here in about a year and a half or so. And here lies not my expertise, so I'm going to hand it over to Jen Larva.
All right, thank you. So last year we did have a goal around college and career readiness. So you're going to see the next 3 goals. It's almost like they feel very similar in a lot of different ways. College and career readiness, we are working through a cohort right now about redefining ready. We're going to be coming at you with different things in the future, but we're trying to get to the point of where we know where our kid, like a different way of presenting the information about how our kids are ready for college and career. So this was our first goal that we had in this area. We had used something called Minnesota Career Information Systems in the past. We did do a switch to a Duluth Ready Navigator, which I know Danette's talked a lot about in the last in the last year. That was that grant that we had gotten from the state, the DEED grant. So by the end of the 9th grade year, 90% or more students would use the exploration tools in that program to develop a personal learning plan. And you can see that we met that goal at 91%. And so we did change that goal for the upcoming school year a little bit, so you'll see that when we get there. It's not like achievement goals where we keep the same goal or, just make adjustments to the goal. We really wanted to make it look a little different. Graduation, so we are ahead of, you can see the star there, so that's good. We're ahead of the state. We did want it to be 90%. Yes. Sorry, it's 23 to 24 in there because we won't get the graduating of 25 results until March? Yeah. We're supposed to get it earlier, but I think March is where we ended up getting this last year. So between 23 and 24, so we don't have the 2025 reporting year. We're just getting to 24, 90% with no groups lower than 85, and you'll see we did not meet that goal. We are performing higher than the state, but we did not quite meet that goal that we were looking for. And then the last one is that interesting, there's more data on graduation, sorry. This is by ethnic groups. You can see that we did outperform the state in our ethnic groups. 23, 24, thank you. We outperformed ourselves from 23 to 24. See, she shifted it from state, and then I get confused. So there we go. You can see that all those markers, we did perform better than we had the previous year, which is great. The next graduation is the comparison groups, just like she had explained before. So if you're taking a look at our comparison groups for 24 and our 23 and 24 school years, you can see that we again had risen, but you can see that we are still haven't made that goal that we were looking for of having no groups under 85%. So we still have groups that were under 85%. So the next goal is that interesting one that we are still trying to get some guidance, more guidance, I should say, from the state. We did ask our MTSS regional support, Gina Cole, this year again, because last year she helped us really craft what our goal was going to be. We did put it in a 2-year goal, so this one is a continuing goal that we will have into the next year because we've only had 1 year of it. We are waiting for more guidance from MDE as to what they are going to have as their metrics coming out of this one. So as she stated earlier, there's still some uncertainty, but this is that goal that we have a little uncertainty around. So in this goal, by the spring of 2026, so by the end of this year, 90% or more of seniors will have a confirmed post-graduation plan. We are at 64% right now, and we'll be looking to making sure that we have 90%. And a lot of that gets worked on during our 11th grade course that we have about college and career and life readiness. And so we're anticipating that we'll have a much higher success rate on that goal in the upcoming school year.
We're going to shift now from thinking about results from last year to what are our goals for this year in the annual report that you have, the long report that I see that most of you printed there. So You have that. The first goal is about kindergarten readiness, and I'm going to let Barbara go ahead and share about this one because I know she was involved in writing this one.
Yes, thank you. So we have decided that we'll leave our goal at 85%. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. We have decided that we'll leave our goal at 85% because we are really looking at a developmental trajectory for children. We have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and we're really looking at our 4-year-old population. They come to us and we really look at their development. And if we leave it at 85%, we will make gains. That will happen. But we know that children are coming to us with more needs. Each year, it seems to be more and more social emotional needs. And that's where we need to focus before we start working on what we would call academics. And in preschool, we don't call it academics. We're really looking at the whole child.
Can we go back for just a second? Thank you. Oops, wrong way. I just want to say, we didn't talk about this, and I know we will be talking about it. We crafted our goals a little bit differently this year. In the past, our goals are really just written around the student outcomes. We've had lots of discussions with our CITs, through our MTSS process that we are engaging in, our pathway trainings, that we really need to focus on the adult actions that are behind those student outcomes. And so you're going to see this is the same goal. It is written differently, though. You'll see that it talks about what the staff are going to be doing, that the Duluth preschool staff will. So it's kind of shifting that mindset a little bit into not just like, oh, we're putting it on the students, like, oh, you students better do better, but, you know, and yeah, we had strategies, but now we're actually writing the goals around adult actions.
I'm glad you shared that, Jen, because now I don't have to go over that. Thanks. So for goal 2, when we're looking back at closing those achievement gaps, for this year, our goal, as Jen was mentioning, is focusing more on the adult actions that are taking place in the classroom. So our goal is that each student will be provided high-quality instruction that includes communication of what they're learning and how they will be assessed. You've heard us talk a lot about teacher clarity over the past couple of years. This goal is really putting the emphasis on us implementing that teacher clarity with fidelity. Oh, that's okay. The outcome of that then is that we'll see a reduction in the reading and math achievement gaps across race, economic, and comparison groups. At the bottom of that one, you'll see that the data that we'll use will look very similar to the data that Brenda just presented, taking a look at the comparison groups as well as race and ethnic groups. The reason, I will say really quickly, the reason that we're kind of putting a lot of emphasis into teacher clarity is because there's abundance of research that shows that it's a high impact strategy in the classroom, and it's been shown to help students make over a year of progress in one academic year. And when we're looking at our achievement groups, we want to be thinking about what are the things that we can do that can result in more than a year of growth in one school year.
And I just want to point out, it says reading MCA 4 up there, because we have been doing since 2013 reading MCA 3s. This year, we will have a brand-new reading MCA test, so it's the next version, so they call it MCA 4s. There will be no comparisons between MCA 4s and MCA 3s. So this is also like thinking about how do we measure ourselves when there is no baseline yet. We're going to have, this is going to be our baseline year for MCA 4s. So looking at reduction of achievement gaps might be one thing that we can still look at as a measurement for ourselves. So that's the idea behind this too. It says it at the bottom in the blue, yeah.
All right. right, our college and career readiness goal, reworded to be focused on adult behavior, is that by the end of next school year, 100% of our content area teacher leads in grades 6 through 12 will help guide the design and implementation of one or more standards-aligned, high-level instructional lesson that requires students to develop skills in one or more of Minnesota's 4 domains. We will focus on employability skills, mindsets and social awareness, career development, and transitional skills, and we'll measure that, we'll gather that on a curriculum tracking document. This will hopefully be one of those areas you see some very meaningful metrics of how we're measuring getting our students ready for college and career and life after high school. We want them to have skills to move in and out of all of those things, in and out of the workforce and into additional training and education. And so as we go through the Redefining Ready cohort, through the Superintendent's Association, we'll have some unique metrics to decide how are we sure that we're really getting students ready for that. And so this will be one of the things, employability skills, for example, may come back and replace those citizenship or whatever scores we called them on report cards. Was it citizenship? Conduct scores. Employability skills could be one of the things that we help teach and measure with students and in classrooms. So watch for some unique metrics there, but this one will really be focusing on supporting all of our teachers in implementing a lot of these skill areas.
Thank you. Okay, so for our students graduating from high school, I'm really excited about this one. So with EduClimber, we have the ability to create an early warning system for graduating students to make sure that they're on track. And when I say an early warning system, it's what we've been really using for Check and Connect, taking a look at attendance and behavior, and then they use grades, but we can also use it for credits, like credits that are attained. So we can start tracking kids in a different way. In the past, our lovely counselors, if I asked them how many students weren't on track, they had to hand calculate it. And so it was really hard to get at that information. But Jody Geisler, who is our district assessment coordinator, was able to put thresholds in for credits as well. So now we can get flagged when students are behind in two of the areas. It'll let us know that, yep, this is a student that we should probably be paying a little bit more attention to. So we've created it, and we need to do some work around like ensuring that people are utilizing it, but PLCs can use it, child study teams or student study teams. Different teams can be using it to see which students that are on track. Our counselors can use it. So we're just dipping our toes into using the early warning system, but we are going to be using it to make sure that we are increasing the number of students that are on track for four-year graduation. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So one of our challenge, this is that 2-year goal where it showed 64% had reported a confirmed plan. One of our biggest challenges here is in the data we're gathering. So this year we've always pushed out a senior survey, but we haven't really been intentional around doing that earlier and then grabbing those students who weren't responding. So if you're not answering the senior survey, we want to know that you're ready for whatever that next step is that you're choosing after high school. And if not, then we need to use our supports and resources to help you do that. So if military is your plan, how can we help you get connected and search what branch of the military, maybe what kind of job you're interested in there? Have you taken the ASVAB to see how your scores do? Because that impacts the jobs you can go into in the military. If it's that you want a job after high school, you want to go straight to work because you're not sure yet what you want to do, what field are you interested in working in? Do you have an offer of employment? Can we help you do that? And then if your next step is some kind of post-secondary education or training, are you ready for an apprenticeship program? Have you connected with the trades you're interested in? Do you have a college acceptance letter, and are you ready to go sign up for your classes next summer? So we want to make sure that handoff is really tight, that students are ready for that next step and that we're tracking it and are sure that 90% of our seniors have that in hand and are ready to go. We know that we do have a handful of kids who truly do take a gap year and travel or visit relatives and kind of decide what they want to do. But most of our students are going into some kind of post-secondary education or training, or are going into the military, or are going into an employment opportunity. And so data collection is a huge one, but also then collecting that data earlier and making sure we've supported them all the way to that handoff will be another area that we're going to focus on for this year. So you may have panicked when you saw that only 64% of our kids have a confirmed plan. Only 64% of our kids reported on that confirmed plan. And so we need to get better at that data collection.
This slide simply, we asked the District Advisory Committee to take a look at our documents, our presentation, and the draft. They did get that prior to the meeting and sent feedback to us. And so I just itemized some of the pieces of feedback that we took, and I just put it right into the plan. So they were right. I didn't put the grade levels on some of the slides, so we added that. And some wording. We wanted to make sure that our document, when we post it online, is readable for the general public. And so we asked them about that. So we incorporated some language changes, clarifications, and then we adjusted Goal 2 significantly due to conversation we had and information that we received in the feedback. And then just some assessment changes to the wording. So anyway, just kind of taking that feedback along our journey this fall and incorporating it as we went was important. And so that's what you're seeing in front of you. And then, of course, this is us. I am so sorry. I'm going to publicly apologize to Barbara. I did not put her on there, but I didn't know if you could come tonight. So there we go.
Thank you. And before we take questions, do you want to describe for me, for the public as well as the board, you have a copy of this plan. Just reiterate again, this plan, if anyone is wondering what are some of those strategies that we're going to employ to achieve those goals, take a look at this document. They have all been mapped out in here. Under the goal areas, you will also see how we have aligned these things to our strategic plan areas. So under goal 1 on page 6, board members, on page 6 of this plan, you will see it has different categories. Clearly, there's one that focuses on supporting every student, so you'll see some strategies that are defined here. And this is not all-encompassing, right? So these are some of the high-leverage strategies that we are pulling out to say, here are some of the big things that we are doing as it relates to supporting every student. Advancing equity, if you're looking at here, you'll see some of the key strategies that will be implemented to consider equity or to have equity at the forefront of the work, as well as improving systems. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware of, if you want to see and get an idea of some of those high leverage strategies that are being employed, please take a look at this document as they are spelled out for each of the goal areas.
I do want to comment on that. So we do have those strategies that are in that document. Brenda and I sat down one day and took a real critical looking eye at that. I think there's always been like, oh, these are all the things that we're doing in schools, and so we just put everything into the plan. That's kind of been the approach of the past. We took a critical look at it and said, if that's not actually addressing that particular goal, some things had been removed out of there because we wanted to ensure that it was really focusing in on that goal. And it also needed to be like what are we doing new? Some of the newer strategies that we were doing, or that we're continuing our focus on something like that. We just weren't putting, like, I think immersion, like adding immersion to our school. Well, we've done that a long time ago, and how is that actually focusing on this goal? Like, if it wasn't fitting, we might have taken it away. So I just wanted you to be aware that it's been really cleaned up with a critical eye.
Member Banks, then Superintendent Magus.
Actually, I think Member Sadowski was on first, actually.
Either way, we'll all get to ask our questions. But I just wanted to thank you all for being here and for this information. It's a lot of really good information. I had a few different comments and questions for the math. Do you anticipate like a teaching strategy? I know letters isn't a curriculum, it's a way of teaching, it's a, is there something that's going to be coming down the pike from the state? Or if not, is there something that we're going to be looking at to implement as a teacher training program for math? That's my first question.
Yeah, I don't anticipate something like a READ Act at this point. I haven't heard anything about that. But when we start taking a look at the new state math standards, they're going to be very similar to what we saw with science, where there's an increased focus on the practices that go into how students are interacting with math. They're called the mathematical practices. So just because of the fact that there's going to be an increased focus on those mathematical practices in the standards, we will have to make sure that we're providing professional development for our teachers in those mathematical practices. And so that directly translates into what instruction is going to look like in the classroom. So there's going to have to be a decent amount of professional development for our educators to be able to help students master those standards.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
My second question relates to the college and career readiness. I'm wondering, if TRIO is in our schools, in our high schools. How do our students access that program?
TRIO is at Denfeld.
Okay.
And having never worked at Denfeld, I can't give you a lot of details about it. The only component of that was at East was, oh wow, the name bank in my head is gone. Upward Bound. What math and science was at East, and that is no longer in place there. So East has no components of TRIO. It is at Denfeld, however.
Yeah.
I don't know details or if it will continue, but.
I think that's just a really great program for first-generation college students, and just having gone through the process myself this last year, getting my daughter to college, in college enrolled, and she has two parents who are college graduates, but it's, it's a little bit complicated, and for someone who has never been to college, I just think it's a really great resource for many students. So I would encourage just looking at that, making sure students have access to that resource and our parents too. And then my third thing was just more of a comment about the lifelong learners on page 57. That's kind of vague, but I think it's really important too. I think the goal that you picked, as far as I can see, really aligns with that, to make sure they have a plan. So kudos. I think that makes sense, at least in my mind. It kind of reminded me of one of my mentors was my uncle. He had his doctorate in education, was a principal, and I remember when my kids started to go to preschool, elementary, he said, one thing that you should just focus on is that your kids have a love of learning, that they're lifelong learners. And if you focus on that, everything else will fall into place. So that's what I did, and it seems to have worked out, at least in my kid's case. So I was really glad to see this on there. It's that was kind of the focus. So I think that's neat that it's in here. So anyway, thanks for being here.
Can I just add one partial answer there? What I do know about TRIO and Upward Bound is that it's not programs that we run, the colleges provide those. So yes, we want them, but it's not necessarily us making that decision of what we're able to offer.
Right, it would be, again, if we go back to capacity and growth, how do we fit those into our schools and collaborate with those programs? So, thanks.
Member Banks?
Sure, thank you. I think you all know where I'm going to go with this, so there's no surprise there. I still remain concerned in our district regarding our African heritage and our Native heritage kids. And the data clearly shows that we have a lot of work to do. I appreciate all of the information that you've shared with us, very important information. But our kids, our African heritage and Native heritage kids, are really struggling in this district, and I don't know how long that's been going on. So it would be great to find out if there's some data that shows how long this disconnect has been going on in ISD 709. I wanted to say, there is an organization in the Twin Cities that I've mentioned before. It's called Black Men Teach Twin Cities. They are elementary teachers, African-American men in the classroom, teaching all of our kids, regardless if you're black, white, or otherwise. And they are making an impact in the Twin Cities. I would say it might do us well as a district to contact them, to see if there's some opportunity for partnerships or mentorships, because, we need to do something different, right? As it relates to our children of color, our Native heritage kids. It's just not working. That's nobody, I'm not blaming anyone, but if we continue to do the same thing year in and year out, we're going to get the same results. So it's about getting outside of the box. Black Men Teach has an online study that clearly says what we should be doing for our African heritage Black students. So it's available. How do we, as a district, go beyond the notion of grow your own, that perspective that I've heard time and time again? If that isn't working, what that does for me is it suggests that we need change. And so, yes, grow your own might be a perspective, but there needs to be other perspectives. And where are we with regard to our ethnic studies mandate that starts in 2026? I would like to say or ask, as you are starting to design that, what kind of involvement in putting that together, or as you put it together, what was the community involvement, if any, in figuring out what that's going to look like specifically for ISD 709? We really need to have more attention to our African heritage and our Native heritage students in ISD 709, because those children are struggling and suffering the most academically, socially, and otherwise. And again, this is not to blame anyone particularly, because we all are a part of this. And when I suggest things like this, I just want folks to know there are options, there are alternatives other than continuing year in and year out doing the same thing, because the results end up being the same way. We have folks in the community of whom might be and are frustrated. We need to figure out why that's happening, and why these children, Native heritage and African heritage, are struggling academically. And I just clearly don't want to be the Debbie Downer here, but we really have to do something different. We really do. We want all of our kids to succeed, but I would really, as a board member, my own opinion, would love to see African-American men in the classroom, Native heritage men in the classroom teaching our children. When you have role models like that in the classroom, that has a tremendous impact and will have a tremendous impact. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you for your work, and thank you for hearing me. I appreciate it.
I very much appreciate your perspective, and I want you to keep asking the hard questions, because that's your job, and you should hold us accountable. I did want to point out that last year, in regards to reading, we've had such a focus on reading, and especially in the elementary schools, we've changed so much of how we do things. But we did realize an increase with Black students in reading, and I specifically wrote down the information here for you because I wanted to make sure that we did 3.2% better with reading outcomes. Now, that's going from 17.6 to 20.8, still well below the state on average. Better, not great. So we're making many steps. It's not big enough steps in a fast enough way, which I talked to Dale about earlier today. And so, because we know you're going to ask the hard questions, and we appreciate it. So I don't know about the ethnic studies, but maybe, do you have answers for that?
Well, I created a board summary report. One of the ones that I created multiples last week. So you'll be seeing them at some point in time. But we are running ethnic studies. It is currently planned to run second semester at Denfeld. So the course has been developed. It was brought to EAC, I know. That's one of the places where it had been reviewed, had gotten input from the community. I know Susan Schmidt, I wish Julie was here because she would have way more information about it than I currently have. But I know that Susan Schmidt has been very engaged with having support with creating that course. Did you have any information about it from last year? I know you were the curriculum K-12 last year.
Yeah, I worked with Susan on trying to find some community representation. We were able to have, and I can't remember the name of the individual off the top of my head, but she reached out to many individuals to try to get some community input. And she was successful, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Okay. So it is running at Denfeld second semester. In my board report that I had, yep, there it is. With all the courses, I did share that we didn't have a lot of kids requesting the course, but we did have 21 students at Denfeld, which is enough to run it there. So, yeah.
And you'll also see the other classes, since we're on the topic, with the Global Indigenous Sports, how many kids are signed up for it, and so you'll see the other courses that we have developed and are running, and you'll see the numbers. And again, this is one of the things that was going to be presented as one of the TLE summary reports, but we're going to, this one will go into my newsletter at the end of this week and sent out to the community and sent out to the staff as well. But moving forward, these are the kind of reports that we are looking to bring the board for just ongoing updates on what are we doing to address the concerns that are important to us, important to the community, and important to the board. So just want to let you know that you're spot on. We have a long way to go. The team, as you heard, we have not forgotten, and they hear it too. We have to do better with our Native students, our African American students, and all of our students, but especially those students who are continue to not achieve at the levels we want them to achieve and not graduate at the levels we want them to graduate. So you've heard it before from me as well, and we keep saying, keep asking us, keep insisting, and keep keep your foot on the pedal with that, and we're trying. We're going
May
to
I
continue
just
to work.
follow up real
Yes.
quick? And so I just want folks to know, I know you all care. I would never say that you don't care. But if I didn't ask these questions, I would be remiss if I didn't. And people in the community are going to be coming up to me and saying, why aren't you asking these questions? And so it's very important, not only from that perspective, but we just have to do something different.
I do want to add two pieces for you. I just want to share, we did do the Indigenous cohort pilot last year. We have continued that into this school year. I'm hearing that some of the changes that were made are being more successful, that things are feeling more positive, in some aspects. That is something that I think we had gotten some critical feedback around from the state level right away. It kind of had gotten reported to them that we're doing something, but then they took it as, oh, you're taking students out of their regular classes. And so we had gotten some critical, some criticism around it. But we went and got some support from our Gina Cole, as I had mentioned earlier, our regional MTSS person. Last year, she was just our district support. I don't know what her title was. It changed this year. And she really helped us to communicate back to the state, and they understand. And now they're kind of looking at us like, oh, we might be leaders in what we're doing with our Indigenous students. Like we're doing something different. We're trying to disrupt what has been happening in the past. So I want to say that that's a positive, I think, that we're trying to do. And then I think the other thing that I want you all to be aware of, I know that, you know, we talk a lot about Check and Connect. Check and Connect really does target our students of color. That has been one of our goals with Check and Connect. It's supporting other students as well, like students that are on IEPs, and they have to meet qualifications. But we really have put a high level of emphasis on helping our students of color. And when students are in Check and Connect, like last year, we had 100% of our students in Check and Connect graduate, if they're seniors, 100% of them graduated. We did have one student that went to the Bridge program because they were on an IP, and of course, they could qualify for Bridge. So we feel like that's a really big success area in our district in offering that individualized support that those students need and keeping them on track for graduation.
Thank you. And I'll just add one last piece to that, only because it goes to that we are making decisions, you know, that are thoughtful, that sometimes are not well received as well, because when we made a strategic move to add additional or reassign additional Check and Connect mentors to Denfield to improve those graduation rates, to make sure there's more support because they have a higher concentration of African-American students, higher concentration of Native students, to make sure that those students, if they are needing more support, if they need more support to graduate, that move did happen last year in an effort to improve graduation rates. So again, we're going to continue to keep bringing updates to the board on strategies that we're implementing and taking to heart ideas and suggestions and looking into the viability of the things that are brought to us for our suggestions. And the last thing, before I come to the next individual, is, board member, is I want to remind folks as well, when we develop these plans, we are also considering all the other plans that are out there, such as the Achievement Integration Plan. We have, our leaders are present at the table as these plans are being developed. So the work that's happening through our Achievement Integration Plan is considered. Our concurrence, non-concurrence is considered. Our American Indian Ed Plan is considered. So, and there are other plans out there. All those plans, those program leaders are represented in TLE when these discussions are happening, to make sure we don't lose sight of what's being asked from our parents and what's happening in other programs as we come up with these goals. I want to make sure that everyone knows that those are not just something put to the side or not considered. They're deeply considered as we develop these plans, and those leaders are part of the discussions. I believe I want to say Member Mikesell, then Member Lafferkamp.
Thank you so much. I enjoy seeing the second rendition, or maybe this is like the umpteenth rendition. To Member Banks' point, thank you so much for continuing to highlight the work that our district needs to do. I have some hope, because when I look at later on in this report, where it goes by year, and we see that our Black students had the most gain when it came to the achievement gap in math, and had the most gain when it comes to the achievement gap in reading. Again, the scores are still quite low, but we have to start somewhere. And so I'm very hopeful that the work that's been put in by our staff is like, this is just the first, and hopefully a trajectory that continues to go up for our students and for our community. The question I have is related to goal number 2. When I look at goals number 1, 3, 4, and 5, it seems as though we're able to measure those like throughout the year in a way to know that we're on the right track. But when I look at goal number 2 and only using the MCA as our main denominator, the right words, you know them, you know, we're not necessarily getting that information until yearly, a year and a half after the fact that when those kids sit down and take those tests. I know that you have plans to assess it during the year, and I'm hoping you can give like a 1-minute summary of what those plans are to know that we're on the right track throughout the year.
Sure. So we do our 3 times a year screener in both literacy and math. And that allows us to take a look at reading and math achievements by students, but also by class, by school, and district-wide. We monitor that. This year, something that's new, which is a blessing and a curse because it's going to take a lot of our resources, but it's going to be a good mandate from the state, is that we now have to provide an additional assessment for all students who are showing that they're struggling in reading. It's called the CAPD Read Basics, and it specifically looks for characteristics of dyslexia. And so we're being told by the state that we're going to get some really great data back from that assessment that we will be able to use then to make informed decisions about instruction at the site level and at the district level. Hopefully that answers.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I just want to add that for the most part, FastBridge is the screening tool that we use, but that's K-8. And so I just wanted to point that out. So we have really good data coming throughout the year on our up to middle school. We are running CAPD Read Basics at the high school because it is a 4 through 12. So on the literacy side of things, we will be doing that. We had done FastBridge kind of piloting, like playing with it at the high school level. In the past couple of years, there was a pilot, then we tried it with like 9th and 10th graders. But we're just gonna move forward, I think, more with the CAPD Read Basics, and then we're trying to figure out what to do with math. There are a couple of other screeners out there. There's one that currently right now is free, but we don't know how long it'll be free, called Roam. That reading one is called Roar. There's some online assessments that we are looking at for high school because we recognize that there's a bit of a gap there with that as well. So just wanted to fill that in.
Member Loeffler Kemp, and then Superintendent Magus.
Great, thank you. Couple points. First of all, great presentation. I always had appreciated the World's Best Workforce presentations in the past as well. And so one comment or question, I think you touched on it, Brenda, but I don't know if I heard it all, but the 5 goals for the new plan, there's only one goal that's different than the World's Best Workforce, right? The World's Best Workforce had all 3rd graders reading at grade level, and now that's taken out, but then all students are prepared for lifelong learners. That's kind of the switch. But the 4 other goals were similar, were the same in the World's Best Workforce.
Yes, the wording on the lifelong learners changed.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so the reduction of the achievement gaps was a major shift from all students read well by the end of 3rd grade. That's kind of a major shift.
Right. But otherwise, the other goals were
Basically.
similar, obviously, maybe with more of an emphasis. But, okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that right. And then I really appreciated the groundwork that you actually laid for this a month or 2 ago in a presentation where you talked about things that we are shifting and doing differently particularly with adult behavior. So appreciated that before this. That really helps. So for next year. And then also, I just know there's a lot of collaboration that went into that, doing this presentation. I also appreciated that you put on page 3 just some of the other plans that we're incorporating in that, so that if someone is reading this, they can know that this is just one piece of many pieces. And so, I think you do emphasize that these are just some of the plans, so it's not everything. So I just wanted to comment. I was glad that that was there, and maybe it was required to be there. And then my last question was, will there be, I guess, an update about halfway through the year on these goals? Or, I mean, I know we get updates in lots of different ways, but I'm just wondering specifically, is that part of what we're required to do to give us updates midway through the year? Or
It is not required, and we haven't done that in the past. That doesn't mean we couldn't do something. but it's not a requirement.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you, and like Member Michael, you know, I'm hopeful. Just my time on the board, I've seen a lot of conscientious decisions, intentional decisions we have made, both with our budget as well as with programming to make changes. And so I continue to be very hopeful of we will continue to see that growth. And I think with the focus on reading, I think there's research out there that shows when reading scores go up, also math scores, that helps there as well. So thank you.
I think much has already been said, and so I don't want to belabor, but I want to say with a huge asterisk, and that asterisk is reflective of some of the comments that have come, that there are areas for growth, and we're hugely aware of those. They're glaring. We want to make sure that we have a sense of urgency around that we don't step away or shy away from that when we think about our work with our American Indian students, when we think of our work with our Black students. 2 or more races, too, is something that I think is something that we are focused on. But I want to say that we see growth. The growth is not yet enough. We're not satisfied because we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible. But I would also say that these changes and this progress is not without a lot of work and a lot of architecture and a lot of forethought, starting from the strategic plan, going through what we're doing with MTSS, thinking about the structures that we have in place with different systems of support. The board has invested deeply in what we have going on here, whether it's thinking about having a director and having an MTSS coordinator to assist that are by level, and then working through the office of the assistant superintendent. It's not by accident that we're seeing the results, but our work is not done. We're just starting. We just have these things in place, and I think it's important for us to continue to commit and to double down with our parent groups and double down with our tribal consultation and to invest in the community to continue to see this growth. But when I think about the comprehensive achievement and civic readiness, I don't always use the acronym. Our district is continuing to improve, and a lot of that is also based on the work of the board. The board determines the budget. The board worked to put together the strategic plan. The board has approved organizational changes and structural changes that are beginning to have impact. Some of the tough questions that are asked have resulted in course changes and cohorts and other things. And again, there's more work to be done. But I just want to say thank you to the full team, thinking about the teaching and learning team as a whole, everybody that's been involved. Very, very impressed, and thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Just want to make sure, Member Mike, so that does conclude our agenda.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.